we meet Lemuel Gulliver, a middle-aged man living in a cluttered New York apartment. He starts his day talking to superhero toys and dancing in the shower like no one's watching. Gulliver works in the mailroom of a newspaper company. That day, he meets a new guy named Dan, and the two quickly become friends. Gulliver is his supervisor. While making their rounds, they bump into Darcy Silverman, a reporter Gulliver has secretly loved for years, but he's never told her. Later, Dan gets promoted on his very first day. Gulliver, who's been there for 10 years, gets nothing. Dan says it's because Gulliver is too afraid to speak up, that he'll never move past the mailroom. Feeling embarrassed, Gulliver leaves and sees Darcy still working late. He tries to ask her out, but panics. Instead, he picks up a random paper from her desk and walks off. Darcy thinks he's applying for a writing assignment and asks him to submit a travel blog. At home, Gulliver copies articles from the internet. The next day, he turns them in. Surprisingly, Darcy loves it. She gives him a new assignment: to travel to the Bermuda Triangle and write about the mysterious ships that vanish there. Eager to impress her, Gulliver agrees. She sets up the trip and a boat. The next day, he arrives in Bermuda. A local man shows him how to use the automated boat. And just like that, Gulliver sets sail alone. At first, he relaxes, reading magazines about robots, drinking soda, and enjoying the ocean breeze. Eventually, he dozes off, but when he wakes up, a massive wave is heading straight for him. A violent storm rolls in. His boat rocks wildly. Then, a giant sea tornado sucks him in. Everything goes black. Gulliver wakes up, unable to move. He looks down and sees tiny people standing on his chest. Their leader introduces himself as Commander Edward Edwardian of Lilliput. Zoom out, and we see a crowd of miniature citizens. They've tied Gulliver down with ropes and wood. Edward calls him a beast. Terrified, Gulliver breaks free. He thinks it's just a dream. Edward orders his army to bring the beast down. When he comes to, Gulliver is tied to a cart, being dragged into the tiny kingdom of Lilliput. Citizens come out to see the giant. He's taken to the royal palace and presented to King Theodore. Princess Mary, the king's daughter, feels sorry for him, but Edward insists Gulliver is a spy from Blefuscia, the enemy kingdom. Gulliver speaks up and asks where he is. The king's secretary tells him, "You're in Lilliput, the greatest nation in the world." Gulliver still thinks it's a prank and jokingly calls out for the cameraman. Later, Gulliver is thrown into a cave. There, he meets Horatio, a man imprisoned for falling in love with Princess Mary. Edward appears again. When the two call him lame ass, Edward gets angry. Quick-thinking Gulliver says it means brave. Edward is flattered and takes them both to plow a field using Gulliver's strength. Suddenly, alarm bells ring. Blefuscia is attacking. They've set fire to the palace and kidnapped Princess Mary. Edward refuses to let anyone help. He wants to be the hero. But Horatio begs Gulliver to save her. Gulliver rushes in, defeats the attackers, and rescues the princess. The king is still trapped in the fire. In desperation, Gulliver puts it out by peeing on the flames. Everyone cheers. The king thanks him and sets both men free. That night, a feast is held in Gulliver's honor. The king asks where he's from. Gulliver replies, "Manhattan." The people think that means he was president, and Gulliver goes along with it, calling himself President the Awesome. They believe every word, except Edward. The next day, the Lilliputians build a mansion for Gulliver. The king sends a team to look for his lost boat. Gulliver has them build a theater too. He performs a version of Titanic, pretending it's his life story. The people are amazed. When asked how he survived drowning, Gulliver claims he was revived. Later, Horatio asks for help winning over Princess Mary. Gulliver hides and feeds him lyrics from the song Kiss. Mary starts to fall for him, but Edward shows up, reminding her they're supposed to marry. She's not interested, but doesn't know how to shake him. Meanwhile, Gulliver's old boat is found. His phone still works. He sees 12 missed messages from Darcy. and she's furious. She found out he plagiarized his article, and now she has to sail into the Bermuda Triangle herself. Ashamed, Gulliver decides to stay in Lilliput forever. Edward warns the king, but is ignored. Instead, the king promotes Gulliver to general and demotes Edward. Out of spite, Edward disables Lilliput's defenses. Blefuscia attacks. Cannonballs fly as their ships approach. Gulliver rushes into the water and blocks the attack with ease. Once again, he saves the kingdom. The Lilliputians worship him, building a fake Times Square and copying his outfits. They even assign soldiers to pamper him. That night, Edward sneaks into Mary's room. She finally tells him she doesn't love him. Angry, Edward flees to Blefuscia. Using Gulliver's robot magazine, he convinces them to build a giant robot. Days later, the invasion bell rings. Gulliver prepares for battle, but is shocked when a massive robot approaches. It's Edward inside the machine. He challenges Gulliver to a duel. Gulliver tries but is outmatched. He's lifted and humiliated. He finally admits the truth. He lied about being president. The king and princess are stunned. Edward sends Gulliver to a forbidden island, known as the place we dare not go. There, a giant little girl finds him and treats him like a toy. She dresses him in pink and keeps him in her dollhouse. Meanwhile, Darcy washes up in Lilliput. Since Gulliver called her his princess, Edward locks her up too, along with the king and queen. Horatio sees this and sets off to rescue Gulliver. On the island, he reaches him. Inside the dollhouse, they find a skeleton of a U.S. pilot and a parachute. Gulliver uses it to fly back. He visits Darcy in prison and confesses his feelings. She forgives him. Gulliver challenges Edward again, this time not for fame but to help Lilliput. If he wins, Edward gives up the throne. If he loses, Edward destroys the kingdom. They fight. Gulliver is losing, but Horatio sneaks into the robot and shuts it down from the inside. Now weakened, Gulliver defeats Edward. The crowd roars. Darcy smiles. Horatio is allowed to date Mary, and they finally kiss. But Edward grabs Mary. She's had enough and punches him herself. Darcy kisses Gulliver, too. Just as another war seems ready to begin, Gulliver stops both sides by quoting the song War by Edwin Starr. Peace is made. Gulliver and Darcy return to New York on their repaired ship. Weeks later, Gulliver is no longer in the mailroom. He's a travel writer now. He and Darcy are together.